What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your hosts, Dylan and Ryan. And today we're going to talk about the Knicks captain, the best player, Jalen Brunson. We're going to talk about what we could expect from him with the new head coach, Mike Brown. You know, it's obviously going to be a little bit of an adjustment for Jalen Brunson. Obviously, he played with Tom Thibodeau for about 3 to 4 years now, so it's going to be an adjustment. It's going to be interesting to see how he will adapt to Mike Brown's coaching style, and that's what we're going to get into, what we can expect from him in 2025-2026 season. So, Ryan, first off, tell me how you're doing, and secondly, what do you expect from Jalen Brunson next season? We've seen how he's been the past few years, so next year could be a really big year from him. I really want to know what you think he might do under Mike Brown in his first year as head coach.
Yeah, so obviously the last 2 seasons for Jalen Brunson, he has been an MVP caliber player, one of the best offensive players in the league, and under a more offensive-minded head coach with someone who might allow his teammates to do a little bit more, handle the basketball a little bit more. That might allow for a little more of a dynamic version of Jalen Brunson. And you may not see the high volume scoring totals we saw 2 years ago when Brunson finished in the top 5 in MVP voting, but I'm going to sit here and kind of give a hot take here. I don't want Jalen Brunson to average 29 points a game or 28 points per game. I think that would be a considerable failure for Mike Brown if that's what had to happen, barring any injuries, of course, in order for the Knicks to win basketball games. The Knicks should not need to rely on Jalen Brunson to score 30 a night or be a superstar in terms of like savior levels of superstar. Go out there and take every last shot. Go out there and force shots that aren't really there for him. I believe that superstar should be capable of emptying the clip, but that should be a last case scenario or a break in case of emergency, not a situation in which that's your offense or that's your scheme or that's your path to victory. You need more off-ball movement with other guys on the court when Brunson has the ball. You need more guys to be able to take the ball up the court or handle the basketball and create some offense while Brunson doesn't have the ball. Because if you can utilize Jalen Brunson in ways outside of just, hey, he's the guy who has the ball in his hands and you know he's going to end up taking the shot, that's just going to create more dynamic offense for you. And you have to use the fear that defenses have of Brunson to the Knicks' advantage. One thing, Dylan, that I pointed out during the postseason is that Jalen Brunson's usage rate in the final 2-3 minutes of a game in the fourth quarter was unsustainably high. I'll tell you the one guy that the Indiana Pacers, the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Magic, the Pistons, et cetera, every Eastern Conference team will not allow one player to take a shot for the Knicks in the final 2 minutes of a basketball game, and it's Jalen Brunson. Anyone else takes a shot, they'll consider that a success in and of itself. If Brunson's taking the shot, they'll consider it a failure. You have to use that to your advantage, and so again, I think this year is very exciting for Brunson specifically because he may not have his best scoring season in terms of raw stats, but it may be his most impactful, and most importantly, it may be the one where he has the most help around him.
Right, and you know, it's crazy because we're kind of assuming here under the assumption that he won't be scoring as much next season. I fully expect him to still be averaging around 25 to 26 points per game because at this point, it's just who Jalen Brunson is, right? He is the type of A1 level scorer who can score at every spot of the court without making many mistakes. But, you know, I kind of agree with your point about how, you know, I don't want him having to score 30 to win games. I personally think we're going to see his playmaking numbers take a big jump. And the reason I say so, we've seen Mike Brown really emphasize the whole pace and space thing. And he's already mentioned about how having Jalen Brunson on your team gives you a lot more flexibility because you have ways to play faster or play more methodical and slower if you need to slow it down. Brunson's been able to do both those things. He's proven that time and time again, right? But with Mike Brown, he's one of those guys who likes to really emphasize ball movement and spacing. The Knicks have a ton of spacing, as we all know. Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor, Bridges, Anunoby, McBride, you name it, a bunch of guys that can shoot from all spots of the court. They have a ton of spacing now, right? So with that being said, I think we're going to see Brunson become more of like a true point guard, kind of assume that role a little bit more, moving the ball a lot more this next season, and we're going to see his assist numbers go up. His assist numbers already alone have been going up as the time has gone on. This past year, he averaged a career-high 7.3 assists per game. He's also become a lot more cleaner in terms of handling the ball and not turning it over. Obviously, some games he has his mishaps, but when you're the team's best player and you're asked to do so much, it's going to happen, right? Hopefully, this time around, he's not asked to do as much as he was when he was under Tom Thibodeau. Hopefully this time, he's asked to kind of just like patrol the offense a little more. Be the leader of the offense, lead the scoring, all that stuff, but Don't force shots that aren't there, like you said. Don't, have to feel like you have to put on your Superman cape and do everything by yourself, because you have options around you that have proven to be viable, right? We have Karl-Anthony Towns, who has had his clutch moments himself, who has taken over games. Bridges has even shown he's capable of doing the same thing. Obviously, you want Brunson to still be the engine. You want him to be the main guy in terms of, handling the rock and in terms of creating shots for not only himself but the other guys. But I do think we're going to see a lot more ball movement this year under Mike Brown, because he's one of those guys who really emphasizes that in his coaching style. He's not the type of guy who likes the one-on-one isolation offense where it takes up 17 seconds of the shot clock and then you're getting a shot up at the end of the clock with that isn't really a high percentage look. He's one of those guys who wants to really get points right away. Kind of very similar to that Mike D'Antoni 7 seconds or less type of offense. Obviously, it's not identical to that, but he's one of those guys that, when the offense gets the rebound or whatever, and they're on a fast break, he's like, go, 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 go. Don't, slow it down and let the defense get set. No, run and gun. And I think with the Knicks, what they can do this upcoming season with Brunson at the helm they can do that in such a high efficient rate. I mean, we saw a couple times even throughout last season with Tom Thibodeau. They had a couple games where they were doing a lot more run and gun, playing a lot more faster, shooting a lot of threes. Their offense looked relentless at times. I mean, there would be many games this year, or last year I should say, where they would just come out and just score at will from start to finish, blow their opponents out from start to finish. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that this upcoming season with Jalen Brunson, with Mike Brown. I think it will be an adjustment, though. I don't expect, game one off rip to be the prettiest game, because, Brunson's played for Thibodeau for 4 years, like I said, and he obviously was playing with other head coaches in his career back in Dallas. So, it's going to be an adjustment. He's playing for a completely different coach who has a completely different style. Brunson obviously grew his game a lot under Tom Thibodeau, so now he has to make a change. That is going to take some time to get used to. I wouldn't expect Jalen Brunson's first like 5 to 7 games of the season to be the prettiest. I will admit that. I don't expect it to be the best games we've ever seen from him, but I also could be wrong. He very well could adapt very quickly, and he could end up thriving. But I do fully expect him to have another very strong campaign. Now, what I do want to ask you, Ryan, moving on to the next part of this, I personally don't think it's going to be possible for him to win the MVP award, just because unless the guy averages 34 points, I just don't think he provides enough defensively to really make up for that kind of, all-around gem MVP level player. But what I want to ask you, can he win the scoring title? I think that is actually realistic, and I do want to get your input on that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go as far as to say that I think he's going to win a scoring title. Again, for me at least, the way I view Jalen Brunson right now is he's teammates with Karl-Anthony Towns, who's another high-volume scorer. And if you traditionally look at how Jalen Brunson has played alongside a second high-volume scoring option, it is not like that scoring option ends up being someone who has to, drop to below 20 points per game. People actually forget in his first season with the Knicks, Julius Randle was the leading scorer on the Knicks. It wasn't really until that second half with the Knicks in that 2023-2024 season that Brunson truly asserted himself as the true, number one guy, clearly going to get more shots than anyone else in the court. I'd also argue the postseason played a huge role in that. I think the injury for Randle that first year Brunson was here really clearly established that Brunson is the guy. But with Brunson, I think that's part of the allure with him, the fact that he's not a superstar that feels the need to get his 30 or else he's not going to be happy. He is someone who can, again, take advantage of the fact that he is doubled and covered and swarmed more than most players in the league, using that gravity to go out there and take advantage of defenses, make smart passes, make smart reads, make the right basketball play. I know a lot of people kind of criticize some of the all-time greats. You look at like a LeBron James, for example, for being someone who, quote-unquote, doesn't take the last shot and is just looking to make the right basketball play. I want my superstar to do that. I believe that's a winning formula. I believe too many superstars in the NBA or too many high-volume scoring guards in the NBA are too obsessed with points per game or too obsessed with their shot volume and not obsessed enough with making the right play. And again, I really value that attribute in Jalen Brunson. And it's kind of weird. I'm saying because Jalen Brunson is so good at basketball, he will never be a 30-point per game scorer with Karl-Anthony Towns as his teammate, assuming Karl-Anthony Towns is healthy. It sounds weird. It sounds dumb, but basketball is so much more than just an individual's points per game, and offense is created through more ways than just points per game. I'll also sit here and say this, Dylan. In the postseason, it felt like you couldn't win basketball games if Brunson didn't, A, empty the clip and take as many shots as possible to score as many points as possible, or B, didn't have a ridiculously efficient game where he was dropping 40 something. If you didn't get a really good Jalen Brunson scoring performance, your offense did not go anywhere. That cannot be the case in 2025. That can't be the case for any team that hopes to win the title. Oklahoma City is a kind of a really good model of what a modern champion looks like. Same with Boston, same with that Denver team. These teams all really have good enough scoring depth where their number one option offensively is not asked to do more than he should have. But out of all of these recent champions, you'd argue that OKC played down to their competition the most. And the reason for that was because that model that worked so well, they had to flip that script. SJ had to go from a guy who was highly efficient, making the right basketball play, to I've got to take the ball in my hand and do everything or we're not going to win this game. We're going to lose the series if I don't do it. That is not sustainable. I don't think the Thunder wanted to play that way. I think if the Thunder lost in Game 7, we would have far more questions about their head coach situation than if they won Game 7. Because they won Game 7, I think their head coaching situation won't be touched for a little bit, but I think the postseason exposed a lot of issues that they ended up having, and you don't want to have that in the postseason. You simply cannot win unless you're leaps and bounds better than your opponent playing that kind of basketball. You just can't do it. You just can't. You can't LeBron your way to the finals. You simply cannot do that and then try and win the finals. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the whole scoring thing that I brought up. I do expect him to be, like I said at the beginning, I expect Brunson to be averaging around 25 to 26 points per game. I still think that is incredibly realistic. But, with the whole scoring title thing, I don't think he'll win the scoring title. I just don't think that's really like a thing for him. I don't think he's the type of guy who's going to be, averaging close to 40 points or anything like that. When you have Karl-Anthony Towns on your team and a bunch of other guys in a more ball movement centric system, I don't think you're going to be seeing one guy score as much. But what I will say is that considering how good Jalen Brunson is and how good we have seen him play over the time, I do think it's possible that, if he does really thrive in this offense and he does end up really elevating his scoring, he could finish top 5 in scoring. I do think that is possible. I don't think it's going to happen 100%, but we've seen him be top 10 the past couple years in scoring, and I'm pretty sure he was at that point again this past season. So I definitely think he could end up being top 5 in scoring. And really, I think ultimately that is not even really the least of my concerns. I think really what I want to see out of this team is just them moving the ball more. I want to see, like I mentioned before, I want to see Brunson, moving the ball more, being more of a playmaker, acting more like a point guard. I think that's really what's going to help the offense as a whole really start to thrive under Mike Brown. I do want to see Brunson get his buckets. Do not get me wrong. I don't want to see games where he's not taking a lot of shots or he's not scoring a bunch. No. But I do want to see the ball moving around quite a bit. I want to see Brunson get, make the right decisions, make the right reads, all that stuff, not only for himself, but for his teammates too, and maximize the talent you have on the floor. I want to see Karl-Anthony Towns getting a decent amount of shots. I felt like we didn't see enough of him in the second half of the year. I felt like he kind of was slowly getting phased out a little bit. It was weird. It didn't really feel like we were getting the entire Karl-Anthony Towns experience for the good of it, I should say, because, I wanted to see more from him. I felt like there were games where we just didn't see enough shot attempts from him, didn't see him really take many threes, didn't really see him, kind of assert some dominance a little bit. I know Karl-Anthony Towns has that in him. I know he can do it. I've seen him do it time and time again in Minnesota. So I know he can take over games, and I want to see that more often. I want to see him do that, but I also want to see the other guys getting involved. I want to see Towns get some shots up. I want to see Bridges get really more involved than he was this past year. I really felt like the lack of involvement for Bridges is a big reason why he struggled. I feel like if you can get Jalen Brunson to get him involved more by making plays for him, drawing up some sets for Bridges to get some clean looks, whether it's off the ball or it's like a pick and roll or something like that, do it. Get him involved. That's really what I want to see. And now that I mentioned pick and rolls, I want to see Brunson and Towns pick and rolls all the time. I want to see that often. I feel like we really did not see that at all during the Eastern Conference Finals especially, but also just throughout the year. They were doing it at the start of the year, and it was very unstoppable. I mean, that's two very dynamic offensive players as a pick and pop, pick and roll duo. That's amazing to have. And you felt like the Knicks kind of just strayed away from that as the year went on. I don't really know why they did that, but that's what they did, and it ended up hurting their offense as a whole, because then in the second half of the year, they weren't as good shooting the ball, they weren't as good scoring. All their offensive numbers trickled down when they stopped doing the pick and rolls with their two best players. You got to get those two guys involved. You got to do it together. You know what I mean? Basketball is a 5-man sport, at least on the court. So you got to get everybody involved. It's not a one-man show. That's really all I got to say about that, though. I think overall I just want to see Brunson kind of take control more as a point guard, be more of a floor general, but also get your buckets and stuff. You know, you are Jalen Brunson. You're one of the better players in the league. I do think that that someone like him can kind of make that adjustment. He's shown that he can be more of a willing passer as he did this past year, and that's what I really want to see out of him. I want to see that continue, and I want to see him still get points. I really don't care if he averages 31 points or if he averages 24 points. If it comes efficiently, it comes with good assist numbers, low turnovers, and the team as a whole offensively is getting involved and they're putting up numbers, I'm happy with either result. That's really all I gotta say about that, though. Before we do wrap it up, though, I want to give you an opportunity for any more final thoughts on what we could expect from Jalen Brunson next year, because, like we've been saying, it's going to be an adjustment under Mike Brown. It's going to be different for him. So, anything else you want to add to it, go for it.
So what I would first add is that I think involvement in the offensive side for other players is important, as you mentioned. A player that I think could get utilized more is Mikal Bridges, and offensively, I think that's the player who you're kind of targeting in terms of just points per game or overall shooting volume, and the ways in which the Knicks get him involved, not just as someone who's sitting in the corner and taking spot up threes, not really moving around, but as someone who can take the ball up the court, someone who can, maybe take advantage of a situation where Jalen Brunson is being doubled, or Jalen Brunson does have a lot of defensive attention on him. And someone who I feel like I've kind of ignored in terms of the defensive attention conversation here is 7-foot-tall Karl-Anthony Towns, who is the best shooting big man we probably have ever seen. He is a unique scorer. He is a very unique offensive player, and he is a player who I think you can win with offensively in the right kind of system, and a player who can be a game changer and a game wrecker. There were times where, Karl-Anthony Towns was taking shots and doing things for the Knicks in the postseason that changed the game, number one, and number two, you simply cannot ask out of any other center in the NBA, really, outside of maybe Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid when healthy. I mean, that Detroit series, you think of the two long three-pointers he takes with the Knicks down in the game, and you just go, wow. I mean, there are just so many things he can do that not a lot of people in the world can do. It's a very hard jump shot to defend because he's 7 feet tall. How many 7-footers or even perimeter defenders in the first place or are comfortable deterring or deflecting a three-point shot, or would even be that far up? How many centers are going to be that far out of the paint on the defensive side of things in the first place? You have so many things you can do with this offense. You have so many things you can do with your newfound depth. I just wonder how Mike Brown is going to utilize it. And number two, I think, again, when you look at Jalen Brunson, the fact that he's such a savvy, talented, smart, creative, crafty, versatile scorer, there are very few things Jalen Brunson isn't on offense. He is everything you could possibly ask for. He is a 3-level scorer, reliable free throw shooter, a willing passer, a guy who's willing to also do a lot of the little nitty-gritty things and a lot of the tough things and the physical things that you just wouldn't ask out of a guard in the first place. I think that's going to mesh with a coach who is pretty analytically minded and very minded on what works in the modern game in terms of spacing, in terms of pace, in terms of maybe shaking up the lineup, things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, it's really that simple. There's so many different, like we've been saying, there's so many different ways that the Knicks can get creative with their offense this upcoming season, and I'm excited for it. I think Mike Brown's going to help lead this offense to much better results than what they were under Tom Thibodeau this past year, so I'm looking forward to it. I think Jalen Brunson's going to thrive, and I'm hoping the teammates also thrive as well. But with all that being said, I do think this is a good spot to finally wrap the episode up. We're about 20 minutes into this. Let us know what you think about Jalen Brunson and what he could do next season in the comment section below. I know we're all expecting an all NBA level season from the captain, and that is exactly what we're projecting as well. So we would love to hear what you guys got to think about that and, what you guys want to say. You can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you just watched the video on. You can also listen to the audio version of this episode on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating on those. You can follow me and Ryan's personal Twitter accounts. They're right there above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out and let's go Knicks.